honor to welcome everybody to our first virtual Nosh at Noon. Our Nosh at Noon series is run 4 times a year, excuse me, when we dive deeper into conversations that are important to Madison. This is the first one of the year, and it is a biggie, the future of transportation, a very large conversation on a lot of people's minds, COVID, pre-COVID, and we've got some outstanding experts here in a whole different modes of transportation, talking about what the future of transportation is going to look like in our community. We wouldn't be here though today if it wasn't for our amazing sponsors. We've got our major series sponsor, Senair, here with us today. We've also got our program sponsor, Janine Punzel and 360 Commercial Real Estate, and our host. Normally, we would be at the Hilton Monona Terrace, but unfortunately, because of COVID, we are virtual. We cannot wait to come back to our great friends at the Hilton Madison Monona Terrace. We had one there last year and it was outstanding. Sorry, we'd normally be feeding you, it'd be great, but we're gonna hear from our friends there. We're gonna start off with a few opening remarks from our sponsors, and Chris Gillings from Senair. Thank you for again being our major sponsor. How are you doing and how is everything at Senair?
Things are good. The need for affordable housing and impactful projects that that are getting done in the communities that we serve hasn't waned at all. So we're just grateful that we've been able to continue our work and continue our mission through all of this virtually, and hopefully we're all beginning to see a light at the end of the tunnel growing a little bit larger. Senair, again, this is our, is this our 3rd year as the major title sponsor, I think, Jason?
I think it might even be your 4th.
Might be our 4th, yeah. So Senair is a not-for-profit community development finance group with a lot of our legacy work in affordable housing through the low-income housing tax credit, but also through other community development and lending and investment initiatives. We're driven by a why statement, and we try to live that every day, which is that we believe that people deserve the right and the benefits that come from living in healthy communities. And much of our day-to-day focus is on housing and community development, but that is obviously so much broader and more impactful. And we really view the Nosh at Noon series as a way for us to stretch our legs a little bit, to stretch our ears a little bit, and really to support one of the healthiest communities in our geography, and that's Madison broadly, but certainly downtown as an engine for that path. Transportation is something that I think we take for granted, considering that most of us are sitting at home, working from home, have enjoyed when we've had to go out the benefits of roads that are generally open, even at times that they wouldn't. So I think in our current times, it's one of the things that might be distant from our mind. But whether it's for housing and for making sure that there's a multimodal transportation system that equitably serves everybody who calls the community home, whether they live, work, or play downtown, but also as a vital economic pipeline to our region. The multimodal transportation system in Madison is a huge part of the fabric of keeping this place to be a vibrant community. And again, we're happy to support this series because it lets us learn a little bit more about the things that we might not be thinking about immediately in our day-to-day, but should as we're thinking about our broader mission. So thank you all for joining. Thank you, DMI, for the work that you continue to do, and you do fantastic work in quarantine. It's great to be a part of this.
Thank you, Chris. One, again, for your sponsorship, but the interplay between housing and transportation, huge part. Next up, we have a DMI celebrity. We've got a board member, longtime executive member. She is just been a titan in our organization, was the most recent chair of the DMI Transportation Committee, and has the great logo today. I love it. It's popping on the screen. Janine Punzel from 360 Commercial Real Estate. Hi, Janine. How are you?
Good, Jason. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you, Chris, for sponsoring the series. So us, some of us other smaller sponsors can put our logo up on these opportunities in big honking signs. So really appreciate that. And I think I actually had the opportunity when Senair opened their office originally in Madison. I was working with Keith Broadnax, and helped establish that initial office presence. So it's kind of a interesting coincidence that we're both sponsoring today. So thank you again. But 360 Commercial Real Estate, we're also very interested in transportation. I served on Transit Commission in Sun Prairie for, I think, probably 7, 8 years, and was involved in larger issues. Susan Schmitz, was the president at the time, and was also very interested in transportation. And I think, I have to give her a little bit of credit for getting my interest level where it is. And, for many of the same reasons that Chris mentioned, transportation is just critical to good development and planning. And 360 Commercial Real Estate, what we do as a company, we're a full service brokerage company. We handle commercial sales and leasing. We do occasionally handle a residential sale if it is, one of our clients that we handle property management for as well. We do management for condo associations, which is a nice niche for us in that we have got someone with really great expertise, Katie Mary, and we've had clients in double-digit years for management for condos. And in addition to condo association management, we do commercial and residential property management and also some consulting. And so one of our current biggest projects right now in terms of marketing is across from Breeze Stevens Field, Archipelago Village. And so we've got a build-a-suit sale there that's underway, and more things coming down the pipeline there. So we'll keep you posted on that project as well. But thank you. We really appreciate the opportunity to be with you here today for this program.
Oh, Janine, thank you so much. Continue to do great work downtown. Continue to be a strong advocate for transportation. Last but certainly not least is our friends from the Hilton, but I don't see Renette Maurer on. Renette, are you here? If not, I can sell the wonderful Hilton Madison Monona Terrace. Great hotel right in the heart of downtown, conveniently located next to the Monona Terrace. Hopefully, with vaccines, business will be picking up soon. Please head to their brand new restaurant, Aubrey. Oh, I'm getting the name wrong. Brand new Aubrey's, yes. As I'm saying it, Madeline is saying, yes, that's right. Delicious restaurant. It is quite good in their lobby. Please check them out. We hope for one of our Nosh at Noons, we're back there this year. Fingers crossed. All right, so we're going to jump right into our panel discussion today. It is a discussion on the future of transportation in Madison, and we have 6 experts. This is going to be a fantastic conversation. Each of these experts is going to give about 5 minutes worth of presentation on their area and future of transportation, whether it's bikes, airports, traffic engineering, you name it. This group they have the information. So we've got the experts in Madison here. First, an absolute expert and a good friend, Chris McCahill from the State Smart Transportation Initiative, SSTI. He is a deputy director, member of the Transportation Commission of Madison, the Transportation Policy and Planning Board, and it's just a really great guy. If you ever get to know Chris, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And speaking of great guys, Yang Tao, he is the head traffic engineer, the director of traffic engineering for the city of Madison's Department of Transportation. Also an amazing person, is in charge of all traffic engineering for the city and has an amazing amount of information on transportation. Next up, speaking of amazing amounts of information, Justin Sternberg. I had the good fortune of walking around downtown with him last Friday. It was a little bit warmer, and talking about Metro Transit. Justin is the new general manager of Metro Transit here in Madison and is helping shepherd through the bus rapid transit program here in our city. Next up, Kim Jones, the director of the Dane County Airport. I have the good fortune of serving on the Dane County Airport Commission, and Kim is a true delight. The airport is a huge economic driver for our community. Excited to hear an airport there. Harold Clemens with the great background today. He's just right next to John Nolan. Hopefully you don't get hit today. It was a terrible joke. There we go. But we're going with it. Also a wonderful, wonderful person, the board president of Madison Bikes, talking about bikes and the infrastructure today here in Madison. And last but not least, Morgan from E-Cycle, the executive director of Worldwide E-Cycle. We're excited to have her here today. And she is going to kick things off with a few words as our new Transportation Committee chair. Morgan, good morning. No, what time is it? It's 12:12. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, doing great, and really glad to be here with such wonderful speakers to talk about the future of transportation. As Jason mentioned, I recently stepped into the role of transportation chair for Downtown Madison Inc., and we have such an incredible group there. So many thoughtful, engaged, informed folks that are helping to shape our conversations and hopefully by turn shape the future of transportation in downtown. So we thought it would be great to kind of kick off the year of meetings by having this grouping of folks representing transportation across the board. And what has the last year looked like in terms of transportation impact? And then where do we go from here? So many challenges, a lot of opportunities as well here in Madison and beyond. So our focus will mostly be Madison here today, but we'll talk a little bit about what's going on beyond our borders as well. So thank you in advance to everyone who has joined us here. And I think to kick it off, we will send it over to Chris. Would you mind starting us off?
No problem. No problem. Thanks, Morgan. And thanks, Jason, for the intro. As Jason mentioned, I wear a couple of hats working on transportation policy across the country at the State Smart Transportation Initiative, and then locally on the Transportation Commission and the TPPB. So I guess it'll be helpful as one of the first panelists to just sort of give some high-level context. I think Madison is in a position that a lot of other cities and states are just sort of starting to find themselves wrestling with, which is how to continue to grow in ways that don't keep adding traffic, adding emissions and pollution, in ways that we can make sure that everyone has access to opportunities. And not sort of just the sort of status quo of growing outward, adding more cars all the time, and then figuring out how to tackle that. So being a little more proactive about that. And that sort of requires connecting a bunch of dots and thinking about the way that land use and housing and transportation all work together. So, you know, obviously this means lots of the things that I think other folks are going to be talking about after me that are pretty obvious about how to get people around without needing to get into their cars all the time. We're talking about, you know, staying a leader, a national leader in biking, which Madison has been and continues to be, and keeps working hard to be one of the leaders in the pack. Bike share, obviously, continuing to grow, so that's a key piece of the puzzle. Transit, obviously, is a critical piece of this, and so there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in Madison right now on transit. Obviously, I think most folks are familiar with the BRT that's in the works. This is Bus Rapid Transit, really sort of kicking up Madison's transit to another notch. And I'm sure Justin's going to be talking about this a little bit more. And on top of that is currently a transit network redesign study. So the whole notion here is that we're going to look at how we can reconfigure the transit system to serve people the best without having to invest a bunch more money. And this is sort of following in the footsteps of a couple other cities that have done this really successfully across the country. I think the one unique thing I wanted to hit on here in thinking about this is how development and land use policies are going to play into this picture as we move forward. It's maybe kind of a cliche to say that we want to grow up and not grow out, because, you know, even while we're making all these great transportation investments, it's going to be hard to sort of chase outward growth and continue to ensure that people can live in places where they have good access to everything that Madison has to offer without always needing to get in their car or get stuck in traffic. So just a couple things that are kind of moving in the background and I think create a lot of potential is, you know, as we invest in things like the transit network redesign and BRT, is thinking about how land use should be regulated around high frequency transit. So thinking about transit oriented development, TOD, and what zoning should look like along the transit lines as that becomes sort of a new backbone of the city. Obviously, lots of thought about how affordable housing plays into that picture and making sure that we can get affordable housing, not just more affordable housing, but affordable housing in the locations that really give people the best access to transit and to other opportunities in the region. So there's a lot of work going on to rethink some of those policies. And one that I'm especially familiar with is this whole idea of incorporating transportation demand management into the way that we think about new development. So basically, I think the status quo in Madison and sort of everywhere for a long time has been that as development comes in, we assume that it's going to bring a certain amount of car traffic. And so the way we approach it is to make sure that everyone's providing enough parking to serve everybody's needs, make sure that they're investing in widening the road or adding new signals to make sure that they can handle all that new traffic. And the way we're starting to think about things is really how do we make sure that new development is not bringing that new traffic to begin with. So you see this starting to happen in Madison Yards, where this conversation started to happen about how can we make sure that we rein in how much new traffic comes from that project. But there's a lot of talk about really formalizing that so that when new developers come in, they're given a range of options of things that they can do to make sure that they're cutting back their impact, whether it's investing in bus stops, bike facilities, even being able to give people transit passes or other sorts of services that help them get around easier without needing a car. This is sort of cutting edge in the country. You see a lot of places in California starting to do this because of honestly a state law that sort of forced their hand on that. But there have been some other leaders in this across the country in sort of taking this demand management look at new development. And so I think that's something that Madison's going to be a leader on. And I think I've said enough there because we've got plenty of other great stuff to hear about. So I'll pass it along.
Well, Chris, thank you. I think it's good to start off high level what we're thinking about in the interplay between zoning and land use and housing and all of these issues together. That our hope today is to get a taste of each of these issues. And then at the end, I forgot to mention this, we are going to answer your questions. If you have questions, you send them in the chat or you can just raise your hand when we get to that time. But next up, we have Yang Tao, traffic engineer for the city of Madison. Hello, Yang.
Hello, everyone. I would like to share my screen just for a few slides. But first, I would like to thank DMI for the opportunity for us to gather for the discussion. I saw a lot of really good people in the audience, so I really look forward to the discussion part. I also noticed that Justin and I are wearing the city staff uniform. Blue shirt, right?
Well played, Yang and Justin. Well played.
We're team players. Chris gave a really good overview of some of the trends, and I will give just a few specifics about the our transportation system. The biggest trend that we see recently actually is a reduction of vehicle use, due to COVID impact. So this graph shows the national data. The total vehicle miles traveled has reduced, to below the lowest level that we have seen, from a last recession, around 2009, 2020 or so. It's generally the same story, for our region as well. So these are from the city's COVID data dashboard for transportation. For the arterial street traffic, the volume reduced quite a lot. At lowest point, we saw a 55% reduction in traffic volumes. Now it's getting back up a little bit, but we're still hovering about 70 to 90% of normal traffic. So by the way, the yellow lines are the normal traffic volumes, and the blue lines are the volumes that's more recent, for last year particularly. We also saw a huge drop in pedestrian activities, parking activities, air travel and others. There's only one exception. That's actually the bike use. I'm sure that Howard and Morgan will talk about that a bit more. So because of that, we have started quite a few new things in Madison to take advantage of the lower traffic volume. and also to provide better accommodations for other users, pedestrians, bicyclists, and also help provide better social distancing when they go through our system. One biggest effort is the Shared Streets program. Last year, we reimagined our streets at a few locations and give the right of way to pedestrians and bicycles. Mostly for social distancing and also to address some of the gaps as well. We did a survey at the year end. We received overwhelming response, over 1,000 of them. And 84% of our community very support the program. So we are working on bringing the program back for 2021. Last year, we received many more complaints than we can accommodate. We only have so many devices to use, and also we need to pay attention to lots of other events like protests, make sure that we control traffic in a way to protect the protesters and the general public. So this year, hopefully that's no longer a concern. So we are planning much bigger and hopefully better program. Another program that everyone is very familiar with is the Streeter program. My department has been part of that. Really provides a different use of our street to help businesses to recover from COVID. It has been very successful, and that's going to continue as well this year. Also last year, the city started a new initiative to revolutionize the safety of our streets. It's called Vision Zero Madison. So it's an initiative of Mayor Sacha, and I'm helping coordinate the staff team on working on a lot of different things. I also saw quite a few people on this call on our stakeholder task force. So I want to thank you for that. So we are taking a very new and collaborative approach to address safety on our streets, and hopefully to get rid of all the fatalities and serious injuries in our transportation system by 2030. One of the big initiatives we did last year was a lot of speed reduction projects on some really high visible streets, such as East Washington Avenue, Gammon Road, Milwaukee Street, for example. From that, we also heard a lot of requests from our residents on, how about some local streets, particularly systematically reducing local street speed limit from 25 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour. So the staff team is working on a new program right now. We plan to have a couple pilot projects this year, aiming for a systematic implementation starting from next year, if the community decides they support the program. We're also making our system smarter by some of our smart city effort. We're using technologies to, as Chris said, instead of continually expanding our roadway to accommodate the growth of the city, let's be smarter and use technology to do that. We have been doing a lot of active traffic management, which is that because of changing traffic volumes, there are lots of things can be adjusted. For a few things, including that we reduce the cycle length of our traffic signals so that the pedestrians and the side street traffic don't have to wait that long. We also implemented a lot of automatic recalls at intersections, which means pedestrians don't have to push a button to cross the street, to avoid transmission of COVID. In addition to make a street safer, smarter, we are also making take a big step to make our street more sustainable. So we are systematically converting all our non-LED street light fixtures to LED. We're doing 6,000 of the city control ones. That's a $3.1 million project spent over 3 years, and we hope another project we can cut our energy use a lot and achieve a lot of long-term saving. With that, I will pass it on, and we'll be happy to have more discussion at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yang. Next up, we've got Justin Sternberg, the General Manager of Metro Transit, to talk about innovations and trends in transit and the new BRT project. Hello, Justin, with your match. Very nice. Well done.
Hi, everyone. Thanks to Jason and the DMI team for inviting us here. I want to talk a couple things just generally around transit in the country. First and foremost, COVID is obviously impacting transit nationwide dramatically. Ridership is down, and our core mission of transit has really shifted from one of moving the most amount of people to providing essential transportation for those who desperately need it. So, with that, we've adjusted our focus to really getting those, nurses, grocery store workers, whoever else, to where they need to be. Eventually this will turn and we will start to go back to normal. And I do just want to make sure that everyone understands that normal will not happen overnight. It will take time as people adjust to new travel patterns. But transit is still an essential in the movement of our city as we go forward. There's no way that we can support the type of growth that Madison's seeing without transit being an essential component. So we do expect that to go back to normal, but it will take time, many years most likely. And so just want to make sure everyone understands that. A few other things that we're looking at long term, and the industry is moving forward a lot on. One is electric buses. So we are here at Metro getting our first electric buses over the next few months, and hope to see those in service in the spring. My history is from Indianapolis, where I led a pretty large electric bus program, and so I certainly see a big opportunity for Madison to move in that direction, and I think they can provide a lot of benefit. But we do need to make sure we do that strategically in a way that doesn't compromise our ability to provide service. And so we are working on a plan to roll that out that I think will go to the public over the next couple of months that really outline our approach to transitioning to an electric fleet. Another is modernizing fare collection. That's a big emphasis across the country right now, and we're no different. We are actually working on a technology upgrade project that's in our budget for this year that would include a major upgrade of our fare collection system. That likely would take several years to implement, but the ultimate goal would be to have everything operational. The bus rapid transit line is operational around 2024. That would include tap cards, mobile payments, account-based systems where you can just reload dollars into your account and then that amount be deducted rather than buying individual duration passes. And so we think that overall will be a big benefit to our riders. Network redesigns, Jason, I think, mentioned that, or maybe Chris. We are kicking off a major network redesign project right now that I believe our first public meeting is March 3rd. Definitely would invite all of you to participate in that process. I think it's flying under the radar a little bit, but I think it can be as transformative as the BRT project. I think it's a very big deal. It really allows us to relook at our network that exists, our city that exists today, rather than the city that existed in the 90s when this network was put together. And there's a lot of ways in which the city that exists now is different and could benefit by a restructuring of all of our route network. But it won't be without compromise. And so we need as many seats in that table as possible. The trend nationally is to go to more of a frequent network where rather than lots of different routes that come infrequently or maybe only peak only and go exactly point to point where you want to go. Instead, it's focusing more on enhancing the frequency of routes. So you've got a bus coming every 15 minutes all day long. And maybe you've got to make a transfer, but at least you've got that bus available to you all the time. And then BRT. So as you know, we've been advancing BRT, and that movement is only accelerating now. We are going heavily into the design, but that really, the BRT will enable us to really create a spine for the entire system that will, it's kind of our high capacity corridor, our highway, so to speak, that we can move the most number of people in that the high demand corridor as possible. Ultimately, I think the BRT is important for us in that it enables faster travel, and that is important. It's kind of a best of all worlds situation. As the buses move faster, more people want to use it, obviously, so that brings in more fare revenue and more ridership. But it also reduces our costs because you know, most of our operating cost is in the driver that's in the seat, and so if that one driver can cover more ground in 1 hour, we can provide more service at the same cost, or conversely, the same service at less cost. And so that coupled with the larger vehicles, we would have 60-foot buses instead of 40-foot buses, so they would have the articulation accordion joint in the middle. All of that adds up to really enabling us to move more people with the same budget, or enabling us to maintain capacity going into the growth of the future for the region. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over, and thank you all for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Justin. We're putting the information on the Transit Network Redesign public meeting in the chat right now. I was mid-typing when Justin finished, so sorry. I'll get that between the next tees up. We have Kim Jones up next, who is the director of the Dane County Airport, to talk about everything that's happening there. Obviously, we've seen some ups and some downs at the airport, and we're excited to hear what the future holds. Hello, Kim, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks, and thanks everybody for inviting me to participate today. I think that our industry in particular is on the verge of a lot of changes over the next several years. We're already seeing them. I do not have any slides today. Instead, I want to invite all of you out to actually see the airport when the time is appropriate and you're comfortable to do that. Feel free to contact me. We do still have tours. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, we have been continuing to work in the office throughout the pandemic. So we are here and available for all of customer needs. One of the things that we saw was a drastic decline in our passenger levels. We went from an average of about 3,500 passengers a day down at the lowest point in April of 2020 of about 42 passengers that day that flew out. We're gradually seeing the increase coming back. Over the last 4 days, it's been the busiest that we've had since the start of the pandemic. We had 6,000 people that flew out over the last 4 days. That in comparison to about 12 to 13,000 last year. So we're getting closer to 50%. And again, I don't want to say that that's right or wrong for anybody, but we are part of the national transportation system, and when people feel the need to travel, we want to make sure that they're comfortable doing that. What we're seeing as a result of the pandemic that we believe may be beneficial to our community is that travelers are exhibiting a preference for smaller airports. There's smaller crowds, there's better opportunities for less interaction, if you will, with people. And one of the things that we've worked closely with the TSA here is they've brought in a lot of new screening equipment and ID checking equipment so that your journey through the checkpoint can be almost touchless at this point in time. We're also seeing a lot of leisure travelers. If you follow the industry at all or watch the media, you'll know that it's definitely a leisure-led recovery. We've done some internal analysis. We believe that our business travelers are really only back at about 20% or less, but our leisure travelers are back at 50% or more on a regular ongoing basis. And this can be clearly evidenced by the destinations where people are choosing to go and the nonstop leisure sunseeker service, as I call it, that we have available. We had 29 destinations, although some of them were seasonal, pre-pandemic. We're currently at about 9 destinations. So we really took a hit. We see ourselves moving forward, that we will try to recover and reclaim that service, as you will. We do have regular communications with our business partners, and we believe that, again, when the time is right, that a number of our business travelers will actually return to the business models that they had previously and will be using the airport, which bodes well for us in recruiting back some of the more business-oriented destinations. The San Francisco, for example, LAX. We also are really hopeful in securing Seattle on a year-round basis. That was a very successful launch of that service over the winter months and last summer as well. Some of the opportunities that we actually experienced, if you traveled before the pandemic, you would notice how busy it was. Parking wasn't always the most convenient. And we had a lot of aircraft that wanted to launch in the morning hours. We didn't always have gates available. It was becoming problematic at times. So we actually are just embarking on a terminal expansion. This, unfortunately, the pandemic has created an opportunity here, in that with fewer travelers and fewer destinations, fewer planes, we are able to complete the construction with much less disruption to anybody, whether it's the carriers or you as a passenger moving through the airport. So that's a real positive for us. That's also resulted in much better pricing. We expect to see multi-million-dollar savings in the project from from what we've seen so far in terms of individual smaller projects and bids. We also are trying to return our numbers for parking to an area where we need to look at additional parking levels in an effort to be as green as possible for the airport as well. We've added more charging stations. We also are going to be expanding the parking for bikes, and we'll be in touch with the transportation services as well to look at routes for buses, the metro, and things that provide service out here to the airport. And with that, I'm sure my time is up, so I'll be happy to take any questions later. And thank you all very much.
Thank you, Kim, for your continued stewardship of the great airport. Next up, we have Harold, the board president for Madison Bikes. Hello, Harold. How are you?
I am great. Thank you for having me. So for those who do not know about Madison Bikes, we are an all-volunteer bike advocacy organization and have been around for a couple of years. And I hope everybody can see my screen there. And I was asked to talk about 2 questions, one related to the bike boom.
We only see part of it, Harold. We see your notes maybe, and then
Wrong screen. I knew this was going to happen. And it went so well when we tested it earlier.
I mean, it did. To be fair, it did. We were in a green room. It went great, of course.
Try this again. Is this better?
Yes, perfect, perfect.
All right, apologies. So I was asked to talk about 2 questions. One about the bike boom in Madison and probably beyond. And the other question was about best practices of how can we get more people on bikes. And I think I really like those 2 questions because they really tie into each other, where the opportunity that we have been given by the pandemic, I mean, acknowledging it has had many horrible consequences and we're still reeling from that and people have died. But I think there is something that can be learned from the time during the pandemic that we can apply to after the pandemic to create a better transportation system, to create better biking. So let's start out by looking at the bike boom. Even if you do not care about biking all that much, you might have seen some of the headlines that have been going around in the past couple of months. So here's CNBC, COVID has spurred a bike boom, but most cities aren't ready for it, I would say. Madison probably was ready for it, so we're good on that. On the front of actually getting a bike, there have been shortages for years. Anecdotally, my mother-in-law, who lives like near Toronto, in the summer asked me like, oh, you know, I want to get back into biking. Do you have some advice for what bike I should get? And basically what I told her, well, go to your bike shop and see if they actually have any bikes in stock. And if they do, and it looks roughly right for you, go for it, because otherwise you might be waiting for months to be able to buy a bike. And I think some of these shortages still persist. I'm sure Morgan knows more about that. And you can, for a while, you couldn't get inner tubes and not fix your flats. So that has been another component of that bike boom. What did it look like specifically in Madison? And Yang already touched upon those changes in traffic patterns. So fortunately, we have 2 bike counters here that every 15 minutes count how many people pass by, one in the Southwest Path, one in the Cap City Trail. So here you see the annual counts between April and June, from starting at 2016 and going to 2020. So you see over the past couple of years, not much has changed. It has been going down a little, but in 2020, you really see this uptick with more bike counts than ever before. If you look more closely at the red and the green in this component, you do see though that a lot of that growth in biking is driven by weekend riding. So what's going on there? So more people are biking, but not during the week. I think this really speaks to how many people in Madison use their bike to get to work and to school. And I mean, based on the video screens I see from many people, I think a lot of us are working from home, and a lot of us have been working from home between April and June. So I think a lot of that commute traffic by bike and by car has really shifted. And if you look at the annual counts, not the annual counts, the hourly counts at those counters. So on the left-hand side, you see 2019, where you have like these 2 pronounced peaks, like from 7 to 8, and then from 4 to 5. And then if you look at 2020, it's all much more flat. So really this bike rush hour has gone away. So it's mostly, it seems like biking that's not work, that's maybe for running errands, that's maybe for recreation. So what's going to happen with this after COVID? As I said, I think we really have an opportunity here. I mean, there's good behavioral science research that says if you have some sort of interruption in people's daily life, and we have seen that during the pandemic, then that is an opportunity to change ingrained habits and form new ones. So we really have that opportunity, but I don't think there's any guarantee that that change is going to be for the better, and especially if we're not proactive about it. I think there's a lot of questions that still remain to be answered. Will employees return to their 9 to 5, 5 days a week office jobs? Are there going to be models where people only show up like 2 times a week? What's going to happen with public transit? How long is that bounce back that Justin talked about going to take? Is this death of the rush hour something permanent, where a lot of our transportation planning is really focused on the rush hour? And so maybe that can and should change. So I want to end with some principles that I think are important for making sure that this change is positive. So from a bike infrastructure side, what we really have learned is that we need infrastructure that works for everyone. Right now, we have maybe 5% of all trips in the city being done by bikes. If we want to get to 10% to 15%, we need to create infrastructure that feels safe, that is safe for people of all ages and abilities. We need bike infrastructure that's connected. So you can't have like a great facility here, a great facility there, but then in between there's something lacking. And we need bike infrastructure that gets you where you need to go. So the idea that, oh, you know, maybe on this busy commercial corridor, we don't need a bike lane because people can just bike 2 blocks over. I don't think that gets you to the point where you need to go if you want to improve biking. I would encourage you in the audience to think about, like, if you have this inflection point where habits can be changed, what can you do in terms of incentives? Do you have to rethink your parking policy? Maybe where people got parking passes for free, maybe that discourages biking. Are there health programs that incentivize biking? What other ways can you have, like thinking about e-bikes? I think e-bikes is a huge growth sector. How can you help your employees and your customers charge their bikes while they're at work? And then the other big challenge, I think, is thinking about allocating the right of way, allocating curb space. I think that's something that we have really seen during the pandemic, where we have streeteries, where you have pickup zones, delivery zones. And so going away from this default assumption, well, there's on-street parking, we don't charge for it, and that's the end of it, and we can't change that. So really thinking about what's the best and most productive way to use our right of way and the curb space, especially in an area like downtown. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Harold, thank you very much. Lots of interesting questions there. And staying on the bike theme, our last speaker today is Morgan from B-Cycle, who's going to be going over the shared mobility landscape and what it's going to look like in 2030. That was an impressive transition, both of you. Well done. Remember, we're going to be able to ask questions at the end. We're going to have a few minutes left for questions. If you have questions, send them into the chat, and yours truly will answer. I will not answer the questions. I'll ask the questions. I will not answer them, promise. Morgan, you're up.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for the perfect setup, Harold. I have heard about this bike boom of which you speak, and I'll just share a little bit about bike share specifically and shared mobility, as Jason said, and try to get at a couple of these questions here. So to start off, I just wanted to begin with what ridership looked like in bike share last year. This is for all B-Cycle systems across the country. There are about 40 of them. And you'll see there was a big hit kind of at the March point where you see that red arrow as everyone adapted to their new reality, kind of stayed at a low. But then in April, May, things started to really pick up. We saw a huge increase in ridership driven by a couple of things, similar to what we saw in terms of a larger industry bike boom. And just some of the headlines that came out of last year, that it was not all gloom and doom, actually a lot of positives in the bike share world coming out across the country. Expansions of programs, higher use of programs, people using bike share for recreation more than ever. Companies coming out to sponsor programs for free ridership in Memphis, in the bottom example here, to encourage people to ride it out as they get through the virus while staying healthy. So some of the things that really worked for programs in 2020, I think, highlight what the underlying factors for success are in bike share overall. And one of the first things is e-bikes. Harold mentioned that briefly. We found that e-bikes open up the use of a bicycle as a transportation option to so many more people. And so among those programs last year that had great success, most of them had e-bikes, and the ones that did not see growth did not have e-bikes. So e-bikes is one key factor for growing and maintaining a successful bike share program. The other one is community. So I'm going to highlight just a couple of examples, but there are so many. This is the Finlay Market in Cincinnati, where Cincy Red Bike is being a real trailblazer in terms of equitable access to bike share. They've just been selected as a living lab city, and so much going on there. Heartland Bike Share, which is in Omaha, Nebraska, found an innovative way to allow more people access to bike share by using a library card to check out a bike. Just really interesting things going on. And finally, in Philadelphia, there are many efforts going on to engage with the community, to increase community access. I love this example here of giving branded masks to folks that were experiencing transportation challenges during the pandemic. So that second factor is really a bike share that's based in community. It's here for the long haul. It sticks with the system and the city through difficult times like COVID, and can really provide some relief from there. So that tees me up to where we are here in Madison. Very grateful for the partnership with the city, including renewing the agreement that we already had for 10 years with the option to increase for another 10 years after that. We are so fortunate to have such great city partners, and what that looks like in Madison for the next 10 and 20 years is a couple of things. More e-bikes, as that headline suggested. We'll be bringing more e-bikes into the system, integrating with transit As Justin continues on the path to BRT, we see bike share as a big part of that as well. Getting into more locations, expanding our footprint, and providing a more equitable access. And this is just a really fun picture of the upcoming Art Bike program that we're soliciting artists and sponsors for right now that will be focused on highlighting social equity and justice causes through that program. So that's a little bit of what's to come in the future, but huge opportunities for growth because we do have those couple of factors for success here in Madison. A great community involvement, great city partnership, and electric bikes kind of leading the charge there. So I'll leave it at that.
Excellent. First question, so we're going to open it up to questions in the panel. We've already got a couple in the chat. So if you have a question, just send it through the chat for everyone. First question is, how do all of these different groups work together, right? How does Justin and Metro work well with B-Cycle to get that first and that last mile solved? You know, maybe Chris, are you seeing that nationwide? Any of you can really chime in. How do these different networks work best for people so they can get around through different modes of transit? Anyone can answer that question. Someone can answer that question.
Well, I can say too, we have a working group for B-Cycle that has Yang as part of it and Metro as part of it as well, to be thinking about how bike share can integrate in, but we're just one small part of it.
Yeah, I would just echo that, you know, a spirit of collaboration is critical and that no one solution solves all problems. And so we have to design a metro or a menu of solutions that can work for different people.
Yeah, I think one of them you saw, Justin and Morgan, both of you, you know, could there be one payment source for every one of these forms of transportation? I think that's something you guys are all looking at. Yang, I think Yang, you brought that up in your presentation, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's you know, the beauty of the community of the multimodal transportation system. You know, it's all part of solution, and you know, there definitely there are going to be some you know, people think that there are going to be conflicts. People only have you know, so much space, but by working all together, you know, support each other, encourage each other, we can find you know, the best use all those spaces. And you know, Morgan and Justin talk a lot about the collaboration already. I just want to you know, brought up another example, like the correlation you know, between traffic engineering and the metro. You know, we actually will be helping move the buses more smoothly throughout the city. You know, by providing them priorities, encouraging people onto it. And, you know, also during the development review process, you know, as many mentioned, you know, we really promote, you know, alternative transportation as we review those new German projects, more walking, biking, more transit use.
Excellent. Next question could be for any of you, really. How do we build more densely along transit routes when neighborhood organizations strenuously object? How can we reduce off-street parking in new development and redevelopment projects and charge people who will work or live in the new buildings a separate fee for parking when neighborhood organizations strenuously object that doing so will increase competition on-street parking? I think Chris sort of went over this a little bit, and if maybe anyone else have other as well.
Yeah, I can hit it again a little bit. I mean, there's not objection everywhere. I mean, I think I personally live near Union Corners, and I think there's a lot of support for the project there being dense. There was just an article in the Wisconsin State Journal this morning about the excitement about how the malls could change to have a more dense mixed use look. But yeah, I think the incentives for a long time have been that folks get parking whenever they get in, you know, rent a building or move into a building. And I think part of this is about shifting where we put incentives for folks. So instead of just sort of guaranteeing a lot of folks parking, what else can we give them as incentives, whether it's transit passes, bike share, maybe price the parking so people can even opt out and benefit when they don't need parking. And then on top of that is making sure that we have the on-street parking policies right, so that when new developments come in, it's not putting extra stress on the on-street parking and generating a lot of opposition that way. So that's something that the city is also thinking about.
Excellent. Next up, we have Jay. Jay has a question.
Hi, everyone. This really builds on Bill's question and kind of Chris's comment. And I think Union Corners is a great example of one of the problems that we have. My question is the relationship between planning and transportation in Madison. I think this past 5 or 10 years has seen Madison's transportation planning and execution just really go up to, national level quality. But the integration of transportation and planning seems to be lagging behind. So my question is, what can we do? What would it mean for Madison to have world-class planning to go along with our world-class transportation network that we're building? And Bill's comment about NIMBYism, and how do we balance the voice of neighborhood associations, which are super valuable, with the need for actually getting projects built and things like that?
Maybe I will take a first stab at it. Yeah, I think Jay is right in one way that the city has a very robust kind of city planning group, but I'll say I kind of agree. There are things to improve on the kind of transportation planning side. With the new DOT structure, that's definitely improving. But hopefully, the city will get more staff to work on that. But I think good planning is absolutely the key. A lot of times, transportation project take a long time to happen, and it takes a long time to kind of fundamentally change things. So that planning piece is very critical, especially when we're moving towards the city growth. When we have a blank plate to start with, how to plan that? I think that's that might be the first critical step, and then how to revolutionize existing parts of the city. Yeah, great point. Yeah, I don't have a really good answer to it, but just offer some insights on that.
Maybe I can just add one component to the things that already have been brought up. I mean, I think thinking about community input and public engagement and what the mechanisms for that are is an important piece, because I mean, implied in Bill's question and Jay and your comments is like, oh, the neighborhood is against or for something. And often what that means, you have a minority of very vocal people that, because of how the way the system is set up, where you have to know where you can comment, you have to know who listens to you, can often produce like a minority opinion becoming very prominent. And I don't necessarily have a solution for this yet, but I mean, I think that is one of the problems where a lot of people will be like, sure, I want more neighbors, so we build more housing in my neighborhood, but those are not the people who are going to show up at 8 p.m. at a plan commission meeting that might go until 2 a.m. in the morning and stick around to make a comment on like, oh no, we're going to lose parking and therefore we have to stop that. So I think that's one component of solving this.
All right, well, we are at time. I want to say an enormous thank you again to our sponsors, Sinair, 360 Commercial Real Estate, and the Hilton Madison Monona Terrace. Thank you for your support. We'll have several more of these throughout the year. Also want to say a huge thanks to our panelists, Chris McKayo, the Deputy Director of SSTI Yangtao, Chief Traffic Engineer at the City of Madison, Justin Sternberg, General Manager of Metro Transit, Kim Jones, the Director of the Dane County Airport, Errol Clemens, the Board President of Madison Bikes, and our own DMI Transportation Committee Chair, Morgan Ramaker, who is the Executive Director of B-Cycle. Thank you all so much for joining us. We did record this today, so it'll be on our YouTube site if you want any information thereafter. And we do have two pretty large events coming up later this week. We hope you can join us for on Thursday, both of them, the 25th of February at 8 a.m. We have U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin discussing COVID relief, everything that's happening downtown, or everything that's happening in the D.C. and downtown, I should say. And at 2 o'clock, a conversation about downtown with the new MPD Police Chief Sean Barnes at 2 o'clock. Check out our website, www.downtownmadison.org, for more information. Again, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Yang. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Harold. And thank you, Morgan, for a great panel today. We really appreciate it. Hopefully, we'll all see you soon. Stay healthy, and I'd say stay warm, but it's almost warm enough to wear shorts. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for being here. Talk to you soon.
Thanks all.